Welcome, everybody. This is Georgia Musgrave with another Recruiter Table Talk. I will be your host today on a topic that is near and dear to my heart as well, and it's all about 2024 and the tips for hiring managers. So I'm hoping that the audience is full of those who are gearing up for 2024 and this upcoming hiring market. And so this is what Recruiter Table Talk will be about today. I have three amazing recruiters joining this table talk today. Colleen Neese, Sharon Grace, and Kristen Posen. All three are with the Duffy Group, which is headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. And they all three have written articles recently about the trends and things that hiring managers will want to be thinking about as we approach this new year. So welcome to everybody and new year to all of you. I was reading recently in multiple articles, and we see it out in the news, 2023, when you reflect on it, was an interesting year. We kept pretty busy as an organization. And then there are companies that maybe didn't do so well. And then there are some that just are sitting on the sidelines waiting for 2024 and what's next, given this presidential election. So tips in terms of how we can prepare hiring managers is really important. And so given that that's going to be the discussion today, we're going to be asking specific questions, and I get the benefit of listening to these ladies talk every week about what's going on in the environment. And so we're going to really do more of a conversational recruiter table talk today, which I'm really excited about. Now, as usual, we're always going to have a QR code up that is highlighting the book, Revolutionizing Recruitment. This is a QR code that you can register for while we're on the table talk, and we'd be happy to send it directly to you. It provides tricks and tips and in terms of our recruiting process at Duffy Group, which we have been told is very helpful to many who have applied it. So that'll be out for you. Please sign up for that book. And so without further ado, I've got some questions here today for the group, and I'm going to start out with AI. And this is a question that came up in a forum that I was in recently. And in what ways does this notion of recruitment automation, how will it be affecting the hiring of candidates moving into 2024? Kristen, I know that you specifically highlighted this as some tips to think about for hiring managers. Can you kind of kick us off in this domain?
Sure, I'd love to. AI is such a hot topic now. It's in the news almost every day. And I think what we're going to be seeing in 2024 is a lot more recruiting and staffing firms turning to some sort of automation. So, AI isn't necessarily this robot that's going to take your place, but AI is just all of those ways that makes your life easier through technology. Is probably the easiest way to think about it. As a recruiter, I don't think you're going to be completely replaced by AI or technology, but the recruiters who don't embrace AI are probably going to get replaced. So kind of keep that in mind. Really just anything that's a simple, repetitive task, ways to reduce that administrative work, whether it's, automating your candidate screening process. There are tools today where you can have candidates apply for the position, actually go through a screening process that's all automated without a person involved. They might record videos answering their questions or complete forms, and then that screens that candidate and saves you a lot of time. Other things can be automated tracking for applicants, whether that's through job boards. They're continuing to develop that applicant tracking software. Automating communication. I think that this is really important. Not being able to communicate timely with candidates is really the main reason behind poor candidate experience. So if you're able to automate some of that, you're going to get a better candidate experience. It's just going to flow a lot easier, whether it's a program that you have that sends out automatic texts or emails, keeping your candidates up to date on where they are in the process. And then one thing that I love using here is automating interview scheduling. We use shout out to Calendly. Calendly is a great software, and it takes so much time away from the scheduling process, gives that time back to you, and just simplifies how to schedule interviews, whether it be with myself, with the hiring leader, maybe it's a whole group of people. It just gets so cumbersome if you don't use some sort of technology like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The streamlining of it allows the recruiter to do what they do best, right? And that's really evaluating the candidates. Do you all feel the same way about AI? Are you seeing this as an up and coming need for hiring managers to be in tune with? I mean, I know all of you have different perspectives on the issue.
Georgia, yes, we're definitely seeing more of AI in our day-to-day work. And Kristen, I love how you highlighted the automation and how that improves the candidate experience. That's so true. And I actually have limited experience with AI, but was able to utilize it for the client experience recently because in most of my searches, I tend to create an interview guide for our clients. And so I'll create the questions and put that together. However, I tend to specialize in CEO recruitment. And so I had a recent project where needed to put it together for an executive assistant. And I didn't know what were some of the great questions. And AI was fantastic. It gave me a really great interview guide to share with the client.
Nice, nice. Sharon, is it an issue for you? I mean, is it something you tackle or you address or you use yourself?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, a little bit. I've been exploring a little bit more as well, and I like the comment that Kristen shared. I agree with it. For AI, I don't see it as replacing all of us recruiters, but this is moving forward. And if you're not moving forward, like with most technologies, then we know what happens. So maybe looking for a different career. I've used it as a guide for job descriptions, where I've had clients asking for some assistance and they may not have the experience. Maybe it's a newly created position, or the person in HR just wasn't too sure, and just in helping to navigate that. And I have found it very helpful. Of course, you need to edit. It's not 100%, all the time, but it was a good 90-95%. I was quite pleased with the first one that I did use.
Nice.
As a guide.
That's great. That's great, ladies. Thanks for that information. Now, I was just a part of an economic forecast for the nation and also the region, the Southwest region, and of course, Arizona, which of course, that's where we're headquartered. One of the things they talked about was hybrid. And they used a term which I thought was really interesting, the in-office heartbeat. Okay, so we know post-COVID, hybrid and work schedules had changed dramatically from the prehistoric days of pre-COVID. And so the conversation that I'd like to shift on is how are hiring managers, I think this is a tip that either Colleen or Sharon touched on, and that had to do with this distributed workforce and how people are coming back and working in different locations. Give these hiring managers out there, how do they manage workforces that are in various locations? What is the take on that going into 2024? How will that change or stay the same?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Well, I'll jump in here and say that, definitely seeing a shift in returning back to the office. However, I do think it really depends on the industry, the position. I tend to spend most of my time in the industries of nonprofit and healthcare. So those are two that really do require people to be on site. Obviously, if we're talking about recruiting for hospital positions, direct care service providers, those all have to be in person. And even in the nonprofit space, that's been the case for many of those organizations, because again, they need to be there to be able to provide the services to the people that they're supporting. So in my practices, I am finding a big push to return to office. However, with a very, conscientious awareness of companies and hiring leaders that candidates are still looking for some of that hybrid and flexibility. So some of them, for example, I have some clients that have 4 days in the office, 1 day remote, and situations like that.
Mm-hmm.
You all experiencing the same thing? Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I'm noticing more of the 3 day in the office. It had been hovering around that 2 to 3 day, I think, for the past couple of years. And I feel like maybe it's been figured out that 3 is that number, and that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday seems to be the most popular with being in the office. And similar to Colleen, so I work with a lot of nonprofit higher education as well, and they're in the office, and even some of my manufacturing clients. And then again, it may just depend on what the position is. Like if it's accounting, CFOs, I mean, they want to be in the office, and in roles like that is important. But there's that flexibility and the balance. So for the experienced employee, they understand their responsibility and maybe can flex and plan and adapt a little bit easier, quicker.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing a push on that there is going to be a conversation with employers and employees about in office, evaluating that in office component and maybe bringing back people into the office. Kristen, do you agree with that? Or am I off topic here?
Yeah, I think it's very industry specific, and even job specific. It can be individual specific. So I think just the idea of being flexible, having some sort of hybrid opportunity for most of your employees, you're going to be the most successful in recruiting and retaining them. Also, make the office appealing, right? So I think gone are the days of all of these miles of cubicles. It's now they're redesigning the offices, making these workspaces where people can really collaborate. State-of-the-art Zoom rooms. One of our clients in media, that's some of their bread and butter, is designing these amazing workspaces. Virtual reality, even they're bringing some of that into it. And then what I also thought was interesting is kind of an offshoot of this that I've heard is they're converting some office building space now into low-income housing, making housing more accessible in these city centers where there just used to be high rises full of office space. So if, companies aren't using it as much, at least they're able to provide some housing.
So a follow-up question I was going to ask her, how are employers, or what would you recommend an employer do to support employees that are working hybrid but are not feeling as connected? And I think, Kristen, you touched on this briefly in terms of making the office space maybe more interesting if they do have to come back. But let's say they don't come back, they're still in this hybrid experience. What can an employer do to make them feel more connected to the people of the company?
Well, certainly there's lots of technology around that, if they're not utilizing, they should be, whether it be, messaging software like Slack, Ring Central, Microsoft Teams. I think everybody's embraced Zoom, but making it so that there are different channels. So there's, formal channels of communication and also informal. I mean, here at Duffy Group, we have a couple of group chats going on. One's pets. I just, sent a photo of my cute dog yesterday because he got groomed. It's just something to break up the day, make people feel more connected to each other. There'll be maybe different interest groups. Maybe there's a book club. And virtually you can stay connected and maybe have a book club meeting once a week. I think it's really important for HR to take a look at the mental health benefits that are being offered through your employment, through the employee benefits plans. One, are they being utilized? You can get reports on that. If they're not being utilized and you think they're pretty rich, then they're not being communicated. People don't know that they're there. So make sure that they're there, because that's just going to help with the whole company culture, the whole connection. And then, maybe you do need to beef them up after you've taken a look at it.
Excellent.
Um,
Thank you for that. Thank you very, very, very much for that. And then let's talk about the younger employees. Okay. For the first time in US history, we have, I don't know, 5 generations all working together. And so it's that younger generation that really breeds new light. And how do we integrate them into the fold? What are you noticing about that, Sharon? You talked about that in your article.
Yes, I know. I've not experienced such an influx at both ends of departures and then new ones at the younger stage coming in. And I'm going to use the term vintage. So I indicate I've been in this for a couple of decades. I recareered in 24 years ago, as a matter of fact. Didn't know that was going to be the beginning of a trend back then. And I'm happy that I did, of course. But I think when I look back at that, we were all about the same, age. And now I'm going to use the word vintage. We're vintage employees, anything 20 years and above. So we have that experience and that knowledge that can really help mentor and develop our younger generation. And many are really expressing that eagerness to learn. We find some that are sponges. And I think that's really exciting. I also talk about in my article that I feel that maybe did we miss the gap in the past decade of not mentoring and developing, as much as perhaps that we could have. Because of all the leadership roles that I have had, again, in the nonprofit, healthcare, higher education space, there's a misconnect, a mismatch of what the availability is in the talent pool. And they're not quite ready. If they've only been in the workforce for a few years, we can only develop them, not as quick as maybe where the demand needs to be if the experienced or vintage workers are cutting back on their work or taking leaves of absences or the early retirement, the recareering. It's been really an interesting mix of events in the past few years that I've not experienced before.
Excellent. And I think, too, one of the tips is succession planning. I read that in the article that all three of you could really touch on is, much of the time clients are coming to us because they didn't do the proper due diligence and succession planning. And especially with the youth and identifying talented people in their organization, any tips around how a company can prepare themselves for retirements and transitions at the top level?
Well, sure, Georgia. I'll speak to that a little bit, and you're spot on. The lack of succession planning is exactly what causes an organization to be suddenly faced with filling a really critical position. And so, succession planning is pretty simple in that it's really identifying the key positions within your organization and knowing which are the most crucial, and also planning for any changes to those roles. So are there upcoming retirements? That's the biggest one with all of the baby boomers retiring. That's where we're finding the majority of succession plan needs is due to retirements. However, there's also those situations where there's just other changes that are happening. Sometimes it's due to an underperformer, things like that. So really making sure that you understand which are the most critical positions and you're planning for that. And, cross-training your employees is another great way to make sure that you're not caught in a bad situation when a critical employee leaves. And also, we are big believers in building a pipeline of talent. And so what we mean by that is you are always recruiting and you are always going to have resources to be able to quickly recruit and onboard talent in case one of those positions does become available. So, providing the succession planning for an organization, that's just something that's going to, really help your organization have better engaged employees. They want to know that they have a career path. It's going to provide overall improvement for the business.
Kristen, I saw your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, my last four searches have been because of a lack of succession planning. It was a CEO of a nonprofit, a CFO for another nonprofit, and then in the most recent search, it was a high-level director over benefits, comp, payroll, and HRIS. And they decided when this person was retiring that they needed to replace her with two other people. So, so unfortunately, they weren't able to grow their own to be able to do that. And I think, companies really need to be looking at that a lot more closely.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, with the time remaining, I want to make sure I get to the questions that our audience is sharing with us. And a few have been coming in. I don't know if we can view that on the screen, but if not, I'll give it a couple seconds. But the first question is in 2020, is 2024 going to be a candidate-driven market? Can anyone answer that? I think that's a great question.
I mean, from what I've heard, it's going to continue to be a candidate-driven market. We've seen everyone keeps talking about inflation, but truly there is a lack of talent out there. What was the word you use, Sharon? Talent hoarding is going on.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's so I think it is going to be still a little bit more on the candidate side in terms of being able to pick and choose where they want to go, and it's going to be a little bit difficult for employers to be able to recruit those candidates without some help.
So it's still a tighter market. It's still tight. So do you all agree with that as well?
Well, Georgia, just this morning, I read an article that I found fascinating because it was saying that, we all know that the typical time to recruit for a position, everyone always says, 3 months is kind of industry standard. And, they were saying 9 months. And the reason behind that was due to the fact that there are so many applicants per opening that it takes that much longer to really get to the right person. So I just thought that was interesting information. But I do agree with Kristen that it's still going to be a candidate-driven market, but things are shifting, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this year plays out, because there are a number of factors that are going to impact this year, and we're still early on, and only January 11th.
Okay. All right. Next question I see, if it can come up on screen, but I have it in front of me here, is how do I automate my recruitment process? Now, we talked about that. Kristen, you really highlighted a lot in terms of that AI component, really staying top of your game and learn, all the components of AI. There's so many tools out there. But what are some just general tricks of the trade with automation and recruitment?
Well, I mean, I would say definitely if you haven't looked at your technology and upgrading it in the last 2 years, it's time to look. So, whether you have an internal IT team, or if you need to go to some outside consultants to shop around for you, do an RFP, I think now is the time. There's so much new technology out there. I would start with that. Do your strengths and weaknesses. What do you wish? What's your wish list for what your software could be doing? Our new software that we just brought on is able to parse resumes and LinkedIn, and it's allowing us to be more efficient as recruiters. We're not having to manually type in, the information we're able to collect from other databases. So
okay, so that investment in technology really is a big tip. Really thinking through the technology so your staff can be more efficient. And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if all these candidates are floating around, Colleen, as you said. You've got to get to them as fast as possible. Next question I have has to do with developing talent. And Sharon, I think this is a good one for you. If you could chime in on this. What if you don't have time to develop talent? You're running around keeping busy. What are the resources that you'd recommend to foster that leadership, to get those folks ready to be the next leader?
I know. I feel that today there are more leadership coaches, leadership training opportunities. So workshops, seminars, just live presentations such as what we're doing, and so many opportunities to be part of global, online communities, and learning and finding a mentor. If there's someone specific in a particular position, industry, introduce yourselves to them. And a lot of people would be flattered by that. And I completed, actually, it was a nonprofit, it was a CEO search. And the person that they hired actually was more of an entrepreneur. So had run her own nonprofit.
Right.
But
right.
really lacked on the leadership skills now of overseeing several employees and different divisions within that nonprofit. So in working with the search committee, I had recommended looking for a leadership coach that would help. The candidate was very receptive, and sometimes you have to be careful on, could be a sensitive topic because they may feel that they have that leadership capability. But we all have room to grow.
You got it. No, and there's so much we can cover, right? So I want the audience to reach out to all of these individuals here today because there's more tips we could have shared. So Sharon Grace, Kristen Posen, Colleen Neese, please reach out on LinkedIn or otherwise. But thank you, ladies, so much for being part of this panel. It's always a wealth of knowledge that you share. I want to thank the audience. I hope that you got as much out of it as I did as well today. My takeaway is that hiring managers are going to still have a slew of complexities to navigate through, whether it's AI, hybrid positioning, working from home and such. So keep in mind that this is an ebb and flow, always evolving kind of topic. Get ready for the next Recruiter Table Talk as well in February, which we're going to be talking about the sensitive issue of really keeping those employees who are working hybrid connected. Some feel lonely, and we're going to be addressing the topic of loneliness. So I hope that you're there chiming in, giving us some feedback from the audience as well. We're always here to encourage each other. So thanks for joining the community of Recruiter Table Talk. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and otherwise. We're here for you. We want to hear from you and connect with us at any time. So again, thanks again. Until February, we'll see you back here at another Recruiter Table Talk. Thank you all very much and have a great new year or start of one. Thank you.
Thanks, Georgia.
Bye.
Thanks.